This year, I recently became a huge fan of Kazuma Kamachi's A Certain Scientific Railgun series. I spent a large chunk of my time this year watching that show, and after finishing season 3 2 weeks ago, I still wanted more. I've already watched Kamachi's other related series, A Certain Magical Index, and I decided to hold off on watching the Accelerator spin-off until after I review season 3. So I started looking for another show to fill the void, since it will be a long time since we get another season of Index or Railgun. After searching for shows that were similar to Railgun, I came across two series, Kikigiri, Compulsive Gambler, and Classroom of the Elite. I tried Kikigiri and I just couldn't get into it. I know we're supposed to suspend disbelief when it comes to these shows, but what was presented was way too much for me to buy into. I honestly couldn't get past the second episode, and I ended up going straight into Classroom of the Elite midway through. In comparison to Kikigiri, the show is much more grounded, and I personally found the plot much more compelling than a show about rich gambling teenagers. Anyway, Classroom of the Elite is an anime adaptation of a light novel written by Shogo Kinugasa. The animation was produced by Lurchi, which has also worked on other shows like Radiant, Danganronpa, and Assassination Classroom. The series takes place in the distant future at the distinguished Advanced Nurturing High School. This school is funded by the Japanese government to cultivate the next group of individuals that will support the country in the future. Graduating from this school nearly guarantees students acceptance to the university or job they desire. On top of that, its students are given total freedom while staying on campus. This school might seem like a dream come true on paper, but it's far from a luxurious experience for anyone except the top-ranked students. The school operates differently than traditional schools, as students are judged on merit rather than just academic prowess, and classes of each year are assigned a rank from D to A. Unlike traditional schools, students remain in the same class each year, but the ranking of the class can change depending on the performance of the class overall. The show centers around an unmotivated boy named Kiyotaka Yanakoji and the rest of the students placed in Class D as they aim to become Class A. I really like how Kinugasa has written the Advanced Nurturing High School in terms of its structure, operation, and function. The school uses what is referred to as the S system, which is basically a point-based system. There are two types of points introduced in Season 1, class points and private points. Class points are points received based on the overall class performance and are used to determine the rank of each class. Private points essentially act as a currency while on campus and can be used to buy almost anything. 1 point is equivalent to 1 yen and 1 class point is equivalent to 100 private points. These points are distributed once per month and are even transferable among students. The desire to improve or maintain an individual's lifestyle or class ranking throughout the school year leads to a cutthroat competition between classes to gain as many points as possible. I think the point system is brilliant and well implemented as both a performance measure and a source of income. I'd even argue that for those students foolish enough to haphazardly spend their points without thinking, it gives them the opportunity to appreciate the value of money and the importance of budgeting. In essence, life on campus is meant to emulate life after graduation, and as such, the competitive environment created by the point system reflects perfectly the kind of job market many students will be exposed to. Additionally, accumulating a lot of private points and ascending the ranks gives students a taste of what they could expect from obtaining wealth and status after graduation. The unusual amount of freedom the school grants each student is yet another way the school tries to simulate the adult experience after high school. The only restrictions students are given are in regards to leaving campus and having contact with people on the outside. Although no reason is explicitly stated in the anime for these restrictions, one could infer that these rules are in place to eliminate outside influences. It's safe to assume that the people in charge want a controlled environment in which to observe their students in, since the overall objective isn't just to educate students, but to mold an intelligent, responsible, and capable adult that can help bolster the Japanese economy. They're looking to create new leaders. Another reason for these limitations could be to prevent students from obtaining information on some of the criteria that determines a reduction or increase in class points. Actions that would result in a point increase or decrease aren't fully outlined in a student handbook or explained extensively by the teachers. Students are essentially left in the dark and forced to figure things out for themselves. This was an aspect that I really liked because it meant that the students of Class D had to be cautious since there is always a chance that they could lose points for a careless action they took. Since the factors that govern the loss or gain of points are unknown to Class D, there is this added layer of mystery and suspense during certain situations. Overall, I think Kinugasa did a fantastic job when making the school itself interesting and differentiating this series from other slice-of-life stories set in high school. Classroom of the Elite stays engaging throughout its 12-episode run because of the unorthodox way the school works and its interesting cast of characters that help to ground its world. For the most part, the characters are well written and many of the characters from Class D add to the believability of the world because of how relatable and flawed they are. The students that barely made it into the school are placed in Class D and are considered defective. While some of the students in this class are talented and excel at certain things, their shortcomings are an issue that could hold them back. For example, two of the main characters, Kiyutaka Ayana Koji and Suzune Horikita, are antisocial loners. Kiyutaka doesn't put all his effort into anything and prefers to blend into the background, so he often lets others take credit for things that he accomplishes. While he's not nearly as unsociable as Suzune, he's apathetic, but also very perceptive, so he's not oblivious or inconsiderate to those around him. Suzune, on the other hand, is completely antisocial and claims that she doesn't need friends as she sees relying on others as a sign of weakness. This mindset is something that Kiyutaka and her older brother Manabu disagree with as they both know the importance of having others to rely on. Suzune wants to prove to Manabu that she can be successful without anyone's help by making it to Class A on her own. She is usually very condescending toward her classmates and is typically forthright with her opinions on them. Suzune believes that she was placed in Class D by mistake and keeps others at a distance, only interacting with her classmates reluctantly as a means to an end. Kiyutaka and Suzune were my favorite characters from Class D, and I enjoyed seeing these two loners interact with each other. These characters complement each other nicely, and I loved a lot of Kiyutaka's dialogue with her. I like how emotionally distant Kiyutaka is, and how he walks around with a look of indifference on his face. In contrast, Suzune walks around with an air of superiority and delusional self-sufficiency, mean-mugging as she pushes away nearly every student she meets with rude and dismissive remarks. The third main character, Kikyo Kushida, is a perfect foil to Suzune in that she is friendly toward everyone she meets and is usually very cheerful. Unlike Suzune, Kikyo wants to be friends with everyone, and most people gravitate toward her because of her looks and personality. Whereas Suzune prefers to be alone, Kikyo hates being isolated from others. On the surface, it seems like she just has an unhealthy need to bond with and be liked by everyone around her. However, it could be deeper than that or something else entirely. In order for me to elaborate, I would need to speak on something that happens with the character, and it's kind of a spoiler. With that being said, if you don't want to be spoiled, skip to the timestamp shown on the screen. Early on in the season, Kiyutaka accidentally sees another side of Kikyo when he goes to return her phone that she left in his room after a party one night. He follows her to return the phone, but stops to watch in secret as she vents her frustrations over Suzune as she kicks a nearby railing repeatedly. Kikyo realizes that she's being watched, and when she discovers that it is him, she threatens to accuse him of raping her unless he keeps this other side of her a secret. The other side of Kikyo is a stark contrast to her usual nice, warm, and supportive nature. Instead, the character is cold, envious, self-serving, and full of animosity. With that said, I'm kinda hesitant to refer to this other side of Kikyo as a second personality. At first I thought she might have a split personality, but it's more likely that this is just who she really is and that the nice girl act is simply a facade. The only times this side of Kikyo is shown is when she's feeling lonely, rejected, unnoticed, unwanted, or jealous. In the last episode, Kikyo tells Kiyutaka that she hates Suzune because she has nothing to hide. Suzune is upfront about who she is and how she feels about others, whereas Kikyo constantly hides behind a benevolent persona and keeps her true feelings inside. Despite her disdain for Suzune, she continues to try to befriend her, which Suzune thinks is odd. Kikyo constantly pretends to be something she isn't so that people will like her and want to be around her. She wants to avoid the loneliness that comes from being isolated from others, so she becomes resentful of Suzune anytime others want to befriend her, despite her constantly pushing them away. Aside from the three main characters, Sakura Airi and Ken Sudo are among the most relatable and realistic characters in Class D. Sakura Airi is a quiet, shy, and proper girl that suffers from severe social anxiety and anthrophobia. Since the character is an anthropophobe, she's afraid of people, especially strangers. Sakura has trouble interacting with people due to her social problems, and much like Suzune, prefers to be alone. While Suzune isolates herself to prove her independence, Sakura segregates herself from others to escape her social anxiety. I won't get into too much detail to avoid spoilers, but Sakura uses the internet to express herself due to her shyness. Through the internet, she's able to circumvent her personal issues and interact with people. The way Sakura uses the internet to connect with others and freely express herself is a great contrast to what Kikyo has to do to make friends. From the way she struggles to make eye contact with people, to the unease she feels around strangers that causes her to tremble and even run away. Sakura is an accurate depiction of an introverted teenager with social anxiety. This character is very relevant today considering how people, especially teenagers, utilize social media and technology in general as an outlet and a means of interacting with others anonymously. Anyway, Kinugasa's depiction of a talented athlete with anger issues is also really accurate and well done. Ken Sudo could easily be described as Class D's dumb jock. Ken is easily provoked, short-tempered, and doesn't think before he acts. Throughout the season, he's constantly getting into conflicts with other students due to his hostile attitude and how he interacts with others. He's his own worst enemy and he doesn't realize it. Like most young athletes, Ken believes that he has the skill to play professional basketball and neglects his studies because he thinks that he won't need an education. I won't spoil what she says to him, but Suzune's response to him when he tells her about his desire to play professionally is very true, and it's something that many teenagers with his mindset fail to realize. It's made abundantly clear early on in the season that this guy lacks the discipline, patience, and work ethic to succeed as a pro player. Ken, along with many of Class D's students, don't really change throughout the season. The first season only focuses on a handful of characters from Class D, which is totally understandable due to its short length. Out of everyone in Class D, Sakura and Suzune are the ones that receive the most character development. In contrast, characters like Koenji, Rokusuki, and Ken Sudo stay the same throughout Season 1. Unlike Ken, Koenji's glaring character flaws are never addressed. Koenji is a self-absorbed, overconfident jerk who has a complete disregard for anyone or anything not related to him. I wish they had more time to focus on his character and the source of his issues. Out of everyone in Class D, Yosuke Harada seems the most out of place, at least on the surface he does. He's essentially the leader of Class D, and much like Kushida is friendly, but also mature and honest. He's got excellent social skills, gets good grades, and is athletically inclined. It's never explained how Yosuke ended up in Class D, however there's a moment close near the end of the season where the first signs of a serious problem with him surfaces. Before I speak on the show's overall presentation, I want to speak on a few characters outside of Class D. I was completely baffled by Class A's Kohei Katsuragi and Class C's Albert Yamada. These characters look way too old to be in high school. Katsuragi looks way older than 17, and I have a hard time believing that Albert is 16. I honestly thought that Katsuragi was one of the teachers during my first time watching this show. Albert acts as Class C's leader, Keikaru Ryuin's personal bodyguard and enforcer, and is always by his side. In one of the earliest scenes with both of these characters together, Class C was having a party. My first thought when I saw Albert during the scene was, dang, this guy got himself a bouncer? I seriously thought that he was a bouncer Keikaru bought using his points. Considering that it's stated multiple times that students can buy almost anything with their points, it wasn't unreasonable for me to think that. Albert and Katsuragi just stuck out to me as odd considering how the rest of the students look and act. Anyways, Classroom of the Elite is a beautiful show with great animation and terrific voice acting. Despite not being an action series, there are a couple of brief fight scenes that are pretty good. They aren't mind-blowing or contain any complex or creative fight choreography, but Lurchi manages to still make the fight scenes exciting and impactful. Like I mentioned before, the voice acting is really good, and I really think that Justin Brenner's voice acting for Kiyotaka is perfect. I didn't recognize him at first because I'm used to him playing more cheerful or spirited characters like Luck or Deku from My Hero Academia and Black Clover. He captures the indifference and disinterest of the character perfectly with his performance. Before I close this review out, I'd like to speak briefly on a couple of my gripes with this show. First off, this series is littered with fan service, so if frequent close-up shots on characters' breasts and butts annoy you, then this will sour your experience. I've said this in plenty other reviews, but I'll say this again. I've sort of built up a high tolerance when it comes to this sort of stuff, so it didn't bother me much. However, it can be distracting at times, and episode 7 has tons of fan service given that the majority of the episode takes place at the beach. This episode largely felt like filler, and the first part of the episode is basically an information dump on Yosuke, his girlfriend, and Class B's leader, Honome Ichinose. My biggest complaint with Season 1 is that we don't get to see Class D go through the entire first semester of their first year. The last 7 episodes of Season 1 take place during summer vacation. I'm surprised that the first semester didn't last the entire season, and disappointed that it was over so quickly. I would have gladly taken one more episode set during their time in school than the beach episode, which is just an okay episode. While I don't think that there's anything wrong with the show's pacing, I do wish that the season was a few episodes longer. Nevertheless, Classroom of the Elite is an outstanding slice of life series that offers a unique twist on the standard high school setting and an interesting cast of characters. I really hope that we get another season sometime in the future and that more time is spent covering their daily school life. There are a lot of mysteries surrounding certain characters that I would love to also see explored. With that being said, what do you think about this show? Let me know in the comment section below. If you enjoyed this review, hit the like button, maybe consider subscribing, and donate to me using the PayPal link in the description. I don't care how much you donate, even if it's just $1. You have my thanks in advance. If there's an anime that you want me to review or do a first impressions on, you can donate some money and we can make that video happen. My rates are in the description. Whether you decide to donate or not, thanks for watching. I'm out of here. Peace.